My name is Louise. I'm turning 34 this year. After graduating from college, I got a job at what one would call a major corporation. Our company, known to just about anyone, offered a decent salary, even for new hires. However, a high salary came with a price. I had to travel for business or training about half of the month, and working overtime and on holidays was usual. It was a pretty tough job, but I felt fulfilled. By the time I turned 28, I was promoted to be the department head, a quick progression, pretty rare for a woman. 4 years ago, I married my boyfriend of 2 years, Brian. We met through a mutual friend. I wasn't particularly interested in dating, but my friend, concerned for me, introduced him to me. I had no particular desire to marry, thinking that I could live my entire life single. Brian, however, said from the start, I want to get married soon. I want kids too. Raising them when we're older is going to be harder, right? I didn't want children, and I found the thought of getting married to be absurd when we hardly knew each other. Plus, I had just been promoted and couldn't think about getting married and pregnant. Even when Brian brought up the topic of marriage, I would gently reject it, saying, You're rushing. We need to get to know each other better. Besides, with marriage, it's not going to be just about us. To this, Brian suggested, Okay. Then let's get married after dating for 2 years? By then, we'd know each other well, right? At the time, I thought we wouldn't last 2 years, but in the end, we dated for 2 years, and then got married. During our relationship, he was faithful, wasn't a gambler, and was sincere and kind to me. I saw him as a hardworking and diligent person when it came to his work. However, his great ego was something that had always bothered me a bit. When a senior at work would point out something to him, he would rant at home, saying, I did it because I thought it was the best, but they act so bossy. I don't have to be told what to do. Listening to him in detail, it was clear he was being called out for his mistakes, but it seemed like he couldn't stand being criticized, whether it was by a superior or not. When we decided to have dinner with both families for greetings, for some reason, he picked a restaurant that charged over $200 per person and asked me to pay half since it was so expensive. I suggested a less expensive place, but Brian insisted. This is important. If I choose a cheap restaurant, they'll think I'm stingy, and wouldn't listen. If that's the case, he should handle it all himself. But he said, I can't cover 8 people with my salary. At most, maybe 3. So please cover the remaining 5. And ended up asking me to pay more than half. We had 4 people from each family, making a total of 8. So Brian was saying we should meet at an over $200 per person restaurant, even though he couldn't even cover his family's share. I wasn't quite happy when he brought up this plan, and I was even more puzzled when he told everyone at the dinner, Don't worry about the bill today, I'll take care of it. But everyone seemed happy, and I thought I should let him take the lead in this situation. So I swallowed my words. Looking back, I think I might have made a mistake. I regret not calling off my marriage to Brian, a man so full of himself. Brian's attitude towards me changed completely after we got married. He began to talk to me in a condescending manner all the time. Before we got married, he knew I was busy with work and said he would help with household chores. However, after we got married, he started saying things like, What would the neighbors think if they saw a man hanging out laundry? Besides, household chores are a woman's job, right? I'm out working hard, so let me relax at home. He never lifted a finger to help, no matter how busy I was. Does he really think people would be fazed by seeing a man putting out laundry? I was fed up with his domineering attitude, but I didn't mind doing the housework, so I could tolerate it. What ticked me off was the fact that Brian was giving money to his parents. Although Brian's parents were farmers, they seemed to be struggling to make ends meet. Seemed like they never made much in the past either. And now that they were nearing their 70s, farming was becoming more difficult. Because of this, they would frequently call Brian to send them some money. At first, I thought it couldn't be helped since they were struggling, but within 6 months of getting married, Brian started giving all his salary to his parents. Brian wouldn't contribute any money for our living expenses. I once told him, This is so much! It's ridiculous to cover all the living expenses with my salary alone. But Brian replied, "How can you say such a thing when my family's in trouble? They're your family too. Besides, you make more money than I do, so you should be able to live just fine," and wouldn't listen to me. On the phone with his parents, Brian always said, "It's fine, I'm taking care of it with my salary. I won't let her say anything about it." It was as if he was only sending part of his salary. But in fact, he was giving all of his salary to his parents. He had no money left for himself and started asking me for pocket money, saying, "Can you give me about $200? I won't even be able to afford lunch at this rate." I finally decided I couldn't continue living this way and suggested, "Let's decide on a monthly limit for the amount we send to your parents. Please find a way to cover your lunch expenses on your own." But Brian would always say, "Got it, we'll do that." But he kept sending all his monthly salary to his parents. That was the one thing I couldn't stand, no matter what. One day, I had to be away from home for about 2 weeks for a business trip. From Brian, I got a, "What? 2 weeks? What am I gonna eat then? And what about my laundry?" Even though he knew I had a job that required frequent travel. When I, annoyed at his childishness, said, "Figure it out yourself. You're a grown man. If you can't, why don't you go home while I'm away? You'll eat good there, right?" Brian reluctantly agreed. 2 weeks later, when I returned home, for some reason, Brian's sister Elizabeth was at home. She lived a little away from us, and we hadn't seen each other since our wedding. As I was wondering if something had happened, Elizabeth, seeing my face, said, "Hi, Louise. It's been a while." "Oh, that's right. The money. It was a lifesaver. Thank you so much." With a beaming smile, saying things that made no sense to me. Without even having the time to put away my luggage, I asked Elizabeth, "Money? What are you talking about?" Then Elizabeth, without any hesitation, said, "Huh? Brian said that since you have some savings, he'd provide for my startup capital. He told me not to worry because that's at least $1 million. I didn't understand at all. At that moment, Brian entered the room holding my passbook and seal. As soon as Brian saw my face, he said, "Oh, welcome back. Good timing. I'm going to give your savings to Elizabeth. You know Elizabeth. She's a nail artist, right? She's always wanted her own shop. It seems like she's been saving her own money, but she's about $1 million short. I remember that the savings you've had since you were single is exactly $1 million, so I told her to come get it." He then handed the passbook and seal to Elizabeth, saying with a smile, "You're lucky. This will make your dream come true. Be grateful, okay?" I couldn't hold back any more and snapped, "What are you talking about? That's my money. Why are you deciding that on your own? I mean, I could understand if you said you'd lend it. We'd need a promissory note and a promise to pay back a certain amount each month, right? Without doing any of that, what do you mean you're going to give away someone else's savings?" I then took the passbook and seal back from Elizabeth. Brian looked at me and said, "What? We're family, aren't we? It's ridiculous to write a promissory note for family members. Besides, we're not lending this. We're giving it. You don't even have a hobby because you're always working, right? It's a waste to just hold on to money. Elizabeth has a dream. Isn't it more meaningful to use it to make that dream come true?" And then he glared at me. Upon hearing Brian's words, I understood he was someone I couldn't communicate with. Just when I thought it was a waste of time to continue the conversation, Brian said, "This money is too good for you, so I'm giving it to Elizabeth. You'd only waste it. You can just work and save up again. Understand? If you still want to argue, we'll get divorced." Seeing this as an opportunity, an idea sparked my mind. I quickly responded, "All right, let's get a divorce. I'll write up the divorce papers and send them to you. I'll come pick up my things soon. Until the divorce is finalized, I'll stay at a hotel. Bye for now." And with that, I grabbed my luggage from a business trip and left the house swiftly. Brian was stunned by my sudden decision, but after a while, he sent multiple texts, saying things like, "You can still come back if you apologize now," and "Elizabeth says she'll forgive you for what happened today, as long as you give her the money. So stop being stubborn and come back." I ignored all his texts. Who does he think he is? The next day, I went to the city hall and mailed the signed divorce papers back home. Even then, he kept texting me, saying things like, "Are you really sure about this? I'm going to submit the divorce papers, okay?" I only responded with, "Please submit them as soon as possible," and ignored all the other texts. The divorce with Brian was finalized sooner than I thought. A week after the divorce was finalized, I timed it with when Brian was at work and moved my things to my new house. When Brian texted me about submitting the divorce papers, he had said, "I feel great being able to divorce an ugly woman like you. We are strangers now. Make sure you divide our property properly since we're divorced." So, I didn't take most of the furniture and appliances. At the same time, I deposited half of the small savings I had accumulated during our marriage into his bank account and left it there. That night, I got multiple calls from Brian. At first, I ignored them, thinking, here we go. But after a while, I started getting calls from Elizabeth, too. Finally, I picked up the damn phone, and Brian immediately yelled, "Hey, what happened to our property division? This is ridiculous. There's only $800 in this account." Well, I was thinking to myself, it's exactly as I expected. I told Brian, "See, I did split the property. We originally had $1,600 in our joint account, right? I left you with half of it, so $800. And all the furniture and appliances were purchased after our marriage, so I left them all behind. That's a fair property division too, isn't it?" Just to make it clear, I got less than you. But Brian was not convinced. He said, "What are you talking about? You're supposed to have $1 million in your savings, right? So half of that, $500,000, should be mine, right? Plus, you have an inheritance from your grandpa died, right? That inheritance should be half mine too." I was flabbergasted and couldn't help but laugh. I saw this coming. Otherwise, I don't think Brian would have agreed to file for divorce so easily. I managed to hold back my laughter and explained, "Listen, Brian, division of property refers to the division of marital assets. My savings from when I was single and the inheritance I received do not fall under marital assets. I don't know who you heard about property division from, but I consulted a lawyer and split our marital assets properly. The money we saved after getting married was actually all earned by me. You never contributed to our household expenses, remember? Be grateful that I even divided that." Brian said, "You're lying. There's no way that's true. You can't fool me. Hand it over properly, or I'll sue you," he desperately yelled with a shaky voice. But I calmly told him, "Go ahead. If you can sue me, then do it. I haven't deceived you in any way. Plus, I've done the property division fairly. I'm not afraid of being sued." Upon hearing this, Brian flusteredly said, "Wait! Let's forget about the divorce. I was wrong. Come back to me." He completely backpedaled and asked for reconciliation. I replied, "What are you talking about? The divorce has already been finalized, and I have absolutely no intention of going back. This is not a joke." And then I added, "Since this is the end, let me tell you, if you plan on continuing to live there, you have to pay the rent yourself. The rent is about $1,800 a month. You probably didn't know because you've never paid for it." When I said this, Brian replied in a weak voice, "There's no way I can afford that." If he can't pay, then he just has to leave. That's none of my business anymore. After that, it seems that Brian went back to his parents' house because he couldn't afford the rent. Unable to come up with the moving expenses, Brian sold the furniture and appliances I left behind for moving expenses. His parents thought Brian was making a decent amount of money and happily welcomed him, thinking it would make their lives easier. But in reality, Brian wasn't able to give them as much money as when he was with me, and he seems to be quite uncomfortable staying there. Elizabeth had been told by Brian not to worry about money and had started preparing to start her own business. But since she couldn't get a penny of my savings, it seems that the startup plan came to a halt. Moreover, it seems that she suffered a loss because she had to cancel the preparations she had started. Brian seems to have been given a hard time by Elizabeth as well, but that's not my problem. I'm currently focusing on my work while living alone. I've had enough of marriage. I still get messages from Brian saying he wants to get back together, but I completely ignore them. It was kind of funny to hear him report his situation to me every now and then, so I let it be. But I'm planning to block him soon. "I'm such a great father for buying our daughter a house. You can leave if you disagree." After all, once you've given me the money, I don't need you anymore. Those were the arrogant words of my husband, who made the unilateral decision to buy a high-rise condo with my money. But it turns out he had a shocking plan in mind. As soon as I heard it, I retaliated without a second thought. I went to my room and brought out our divorce papers. All right, here, divorce papers. The look on my husband's face was priceless when he saw the divorce papers. I suppose he never imagined I'd have them ready to go. But the real counterattack was just beginning. I couldn't help but smirk. My name is Lily Johnson. I'm a 50-year-old office worker who has loved the Japanese language since my student days. I can carry on a casual conversation in Japanese without any issues. When I was 23, I married for the first time. Unfortunately, my husband left this world just 6 months after our wedding. The cause was a traffic accident. He was hit by a drunk driver. Back then, I couldn't accept the harsh reality and lived my days with a gloomy face. I received $500,000 in life insurance money after my husband's death, but no amount of money could bring him back. During the darkest times of my life, I was comforted by a man named Ethan Johnson. He was a coworker at my company who would listen to my story for hours on end. Over time, I found myself falling for him, and we married when I was 25. I never forgot about my first husband. I still vividly remember the times we shared, and I decided to keep the life insurance money untouched for emergencies. A year after marrying Ethan, we had a daughter, Mia. Mia is now an illustrator, living on her own. With her grown up, one might think I'd have a peaceful life with my husband, but that's not the case. Our relationship started to deteriorate when Mia was in her junior year of high school, because we couldn't agree on Mia's education. From the time Mia was born, Ethan had mapped out her future on his own. He repeatedly expressed his wish for Mia to attend a prestigious university, believing it would open up more opportunities for her future. He even enrolled her in tutoring services since elementary school. Ethan never pushed Mia too hard to study, so I didn't oppose. But Mia loved drawing more than studying, and even as an amateur, I could tell she was incredibly talented. I had a hunch she might make it her career someday. That hunch turned out to be right when Mia announced during her junior year of high school, "I want to be an illustrator in the future, so I want to go to an art school for university." I wanted Mia to pursue what she loved, so I agreed. But Ethan was vehemently opposed. "Go to a prestigious university like Harvard. After graduation, work for a big corporation. It's more secure, and you'll be happier," he yelled, completely dismissing Mia's dream. Even when Mia suggested I could start by working for a company, Ethan wouldn't hear it. "An illustrator? You're just playing around, drawing pictures. I didn't invest all this money in you for you to have such a frivolous career." He was so harsh that I found myself stepping in. "There's no need to speak like that. It's Mia's life. Let her try," I said. But that only made Ethan angrier. "Mia is my daughter. It's a child's job to fulfill their parents' dreams. And if she lives as I say, she's guaranteed to be happy," he spouted. Such nonsense. There's no guarantee that attending a renowned university or landing a job at a big corporation equals a happy life. It was shocking to realize Ethan held such a distorted belief. I had hoped he would eventually come to understand and support Mia's decision, but that was wishful thinking. Despite our attempts to persuade him, our efforts were in vain. A deep rift formed between us. While I took on all the financial responsibility for Mia's education and living expenses, he seemed dissatisfied. I remember his constant complaining and snide remarks. Despite all this, Mia was admitted to her first choice art university and worked hard at her art studies. She landed a job as an illustrator at a certain company and started living on her own. Though there are tough times, like working through the night and on holidays, she's doing well. However, my husband still refuses to accept Mia's job. He constantly complains, saying, "We wasted money on tutoring services. It's embarrassing to have such a failure as a daughter." I thought his views would change once he saw Mia standing on her own, but there's not even a trace of that. He's also been harsh towards me, for siding with Mia. He yells about the food tasting bad or the cleaning not being done, almost every day, despite not being able to do any housework himself and leaving it all to me. At this point, I realized that this was his true nature. He seems to be the type of person who can't stand when things don't go his way. He was kind when Mia was obedient, but changed dramatically when she expressed her desire to become an illustrator. It's probably due to his personality. Being at home was painful for me, and the company became my place of comfort. We work at the same company, but in different departments, so we can avoid each other. Around this time, I received a certain offer. Hearing it, I made a big decision. One day, my husband suddenly said something unexpected. I've decided to buy Mia a brand new high-rise condominium. Mia is still my precious daughter after all. I want her to live somewhere nice. I've already started the paperwork with a real estate agent. Despite his contempt for Mia, this sudden turn of events aroused suspicion. Moreover, I wondered if he had the money to buy a new high-rise condominium. Seeing my reaction, he smirked. Don't worry, you're the one paying for the high-rise condominium. What? Hold on a second. You can't just decide something like that without discussing it, I retorted. Ethan just scoffed. I know. You've got $500,000 from your previous husband's life insurance, right? You can buy it with that. With your money, I'm going to live in the high-rise condominium with Mia. I've had to put up with her, so I'm planning to make full use of her. You and Mia are ultimately my property, so just obey me. A surge of anger rose within me. He had decided to buy the high-rise condominium to spite me and Mia. I couldn't comprehend his way of thinking. Incredibly, he carelessly revealed his scheme and intentions. Besides, there was no way I was going to let my important life insurance money be used for such a thing. I am truly a good father, buying a house for my daughter. If you oppose, it's divorce. Just give me the money, and I'm done with you. The moment I heard that, I struck back, without mercy. I went to my room and brought out divorce papers. Fine, here, divorce papers. When I showed him the divorce papers, he was stunned. He must not have expected me to have them. But the real retaliation starts here. I smirked. Facing my bewildered husband, I explained what I had been considering for some time now. I can't trust a man who discriminates against his own daughter like that. I'm tired of living a life where I'm constantly criticized by you. I had decided a while ago to divorce you. I was just waiting for the right time to bring it up. And then you said you wanted a divorce. It worked out just fine. He must have intended the divorce talk to be a threat. Completely flustered, he stammered. Well, you see... Ignoring him, I filled in the divorce papers. Come on, you write it down too. You want to be free from me too, don't you? When I urged him, he reacted in rage. What do you mean divorce? It was just a joke. What are you thinking, bringing out divorce papers? Hearing that, my anger reached its peak. I don't understand you either. I don't understand why you would buy a high-rise condominium just to spite your family. If you say we can't divorce, I'm willing to consult a lawyer. Then, begrudgingly, he filled in the divorce papers, but he was furious, saying, Remember this! It seemed like he would retaliate in some form if I stayed in the house. I immediately left the house and submitted the divorce papers to the office. Then, when I reported everything to Mia by phone, she was also as angry as I was at my husband's outrageous behavior. That's terrible! You're right to divorce him. You can stay in my condo for a while, she said. So I decided to take her up on her offer. That night, Mia and I discussed and planned to retaliate against my husband. Then, about a week later, on a day off, Mia and I visited the house where my husband, or rather ex-husband, lives. Even though I was living there just a week ago, it felt like someone else's house. When we rang the doorbell, he came out immediately. What do you two want? Did you come to apologize for what happened? My ex-husband looked down on Mia and me with a condescending gaze. I was quite irritated, but I swallowed my anger and spoke in a slightly weak voice. That's right. I came to apologize because I thought I had done something wrong. I'm sorry, Dad. Mia also made a remorseful face. Quite an actress. However, the ex-husband didn't realize it was a performance and seemed genuinely pleased, saying, I see. I see. So, you've decided to reflect on your actions. I'm happy. However, he seemed curious about the bags we were carrying. What are you doing with all those bags? We were carrying bags that were filled to the brim in both hands. The bags were tied up, so you couldn't see inside. I took a stack of $10,000 bills from one of the bags. By the way, this was real money. I thought it was wrong what I did to you, so I decided to give you my late husband's life insurance money. You can live in the high-rise condominium with Mia with this money. There's $500,000. Can you put it in the safe? The ex-husband was entranced by the $10,000 stack of bills. Sure, please, put it in the safe. He easily let Mia and me into the house. Even though it had only been a week since we left, the house was littered with laundry and garbage. Come to think of it, the ex-husband was very bad at tidying up and doing housework. Imagining that he must be having a hard time living alone, I couldn't help but smile. Mia and I stuffed the contents of the bags into the safe. However, we put the $10,000 we showed him back in the bag, not in the safe. Fortunately, he wasn't watching us, as he went to the kitchen, saying, I'll make some tea. When I returned to Mia's condo, I packed my bags and went out again. I was going to set out on my own to a new place. Take care, Mom. Mia saw me off with a smile. I'll contact you when I settle down. Take care of yourself, Mia. I left Mia's condo with a smile on my face. 2 days later, I was asleep in my new home when I received a call from my ex-husband. Hey, what happened to the $500,000? There's nothing but garbage in the safe. As I burst into laughter, I thought to myself, he really took a while to figure it out, huh? My ex-husband had fallen neatly into my trap. The majority of what was in those bags was simply scrap paper. I had rolled up unwanted newspapers and filled the bags. I told them that each bag contained $500,000, but that was a lie. To gain his trust, I did prepare $10,000 in real cash from the bank. That money was immediately returned to my account, so I had nothing in hand. If he had asked to see the content of the bags, I was ready to show him, scoffing at the absurdity of the situation. But he was fooled by just the sight of the $10,000 and didn't suspect a thing until now. You've treated Mia and me horribly. I think it's fair to return the favor. If you want to hold a grudge, hold it against your past self, not me. When I said that, he responded desperately. I understand. I was wrong. Can we live together again? I can't afford the high-rise condo, and I can't manage the housework. My place has turned into a trash heap. Taken aback by his self-centered plea, I retorted, I'm not your ATM or your housemaid. You're an adult. Figure it out. Besides, I'm in Japan now. I can't come back to you. That's right. I was now living in Tokyo, Japan. This wasn't a mere overseas trip. I received an offer to work abroad from my company and decided to take it up. I've always wanted to work overseas, and I love studying Japanese. The offer that came before our divorce was this opportunity to work overseas. Once I heard about it, I decided to divorce him and live overseas. I could live my dream and get away from my ex-husband. It was killing two birds with one stone. I had told Mia, but kept it from my ex, who was clearly taken aback. So that's why I haven't seen you at work recently. Why didn't you tell me? Why should I? We're in different apartments, and we're strangers now. Oh, by the way, Mia has something she wants to say to you. Tomorrow, we'll call you at 8 p.m., your time, using a messaging app. Alright. Is Mia going to live with me? We'll see. Wait until tomorrow. I said that and hung up, but I knew what Mia was going to talk about. I was looking forward to seeing his reaction as I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I had to get up fairly early due to the time difference, but it couldn't be helped. I started up the messaging app and video called my ex and Mia. Mia started expressing her feelings to her father right away. I loved you when I was a kid, Dad. I respected you as a parent and loved you from the bottom of my heart. Ethan looked pleased to hear that, but Mia's speech didn't stop there. But that's all in the past. You outright denied my career path, right? That's when I realized your true nature. You just wanted to control me, and there's no love in that. I hate you now, and I don't want to see you again. This call is our final contact. Upon hearing that, my ex seemed to be on the verge of tears. Don't say such things. I had expected him to get angry, but this reaction was surprising. Maybe he assumed Mia would love him, no matter what. But Mia's harsh words continued. This is how I really feel. Dad, you need to reflect on how you hurt Mom all this time. Also, I moved out, so there's no point in going to the apartment where I used to live. Don't use detectives or anything to forcefully find out my new address. That's all I wanted to say. I also told him something I had forgotten to mention earlier. I've explained the circumstances of our divorce to our workplace, relatives, and your parents. I don't think relying on them will do you any good. Well, goodbye. Once Mia ended the video call, I also ended mine. My ex-husband was pleading. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I apologize. So please give me another chance. But I didn't care about that anymore. Later, when Mia and I talked, she said, I feel so much better now that I've said what I wanted to. I felt relieved after seeing my ex-husband in distress too. Apparently, it became uncomfortable for my ex-husband at his workplace, so he resigned. He was disowned by relatives and his own parents, couldn't buy the high-rise condominium, and had to cancel. Moreover, he caused a scene at Mia's workplace, trying to call her out at the reception desk. He was immediately locked out and banned from the premises. My ex-husband, who kept repeating his selfish behavior, ended up losing everything instead of gaining anything. He seems to have lost all his energy and is now living as a recluse at home. A colleague wanted to ask him something about the handover of work and tried to contact him, but he didn't answer. The colleague went to his house reluctantly, where he found my ex-husband looking lifeless with a thick beard. He looked like a ghost, and a bad smell was coming from the room, according to the colleague. His house is probably in a state of garbage dump. Looking at my ex-husband living such an unfortunate life, I couldn't help but think he got what he deserved. On the other hand, I am enjoying my job overseas. I do hit cultural barriers being surrounded by foreigners, but I overcome them by carefully communicating. I can use my proficiency in Japanese, and I'm really glad I transferred overseas. Mia is working hard as an illustrator, and it seems like she's been giving some big projects recently. I have a lot of meaningful work, and it's fun, she said over the phone. It's a joy for me as a parent to see my daughter doing what she loves. Despite all the hurdles, both Mia and I are starting to shine in our lives.
Hey, Nellie, do you even realize what you've done? How could you neglect your duties as a wife and burden Sal like this? You're the worst wife ever. I'll teach you a lesson. Mother-in-law, there's a reason I left. I don't care. We've decided to move to a brand new beautiful apartment. If you want to live with us, I'll tell you where it is. Mother-in-law probably still doesn't know the whole story. I thought this might actually work in my favor. No thanks, I'm good. Huh? My name is Nellie, a 35-year-old office worker. I've been married to Sal for 5 years. He's currently 40, so there's a 5-year age gap between us. I've always been attracted to older men, and I fell for Sal because he's so calm and kind. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and we got married. Our married life was pretty good. But a few months ago, I could see the end of our peaceful life. I've been laid off. What? Sal was suddenly laid off. The company was struggling due to an economic downturn. I never thought Sal would be laid off, especially since he worked for a major corporation. I assumed we'd continue to live comfortably on his good salary, but nothing in life is guaranteed. We were suddenly in a tight spot. I used to be a homemaker, but I decided to start working again. I reached out to the company I left when we got married, thinking they might not rehire me, but luckily they did. Apparently, someone had just quit after giving birth. This job saved us from a total crisis. If Sal could find another job, we'd be okay. But it's tough for middle-aged men to find work. So he could only get a part-time job, earning around $700 a month. My salary isn't that high either, since I'm returning to work after 5 years. It's just enough for the two of us to get by. Hey, our rent is high. Should we move somewhere cheaper? I think it'd be better to save some money. To make our lives easier, we needed to cut our fixed costs. We used to live in a nice apartment because of Sal's high salary. But we should face reality and move to an apartment that's hundreds of dollars cheaper. However, Sal quickly shot down my suggestion. No, we're not moving. Why not? If we move to a smaller, cheaper apartment, my mom will ask why. I didn't get it. We can just tell her the truth that you were laid off and things are tough now. When I said that, Sal's face turned red, and he raised his voice. Stop it! Never tell my mom I was laid off. We can pay the rent with your salary and my earnings. We're fine as we are. I was shocked and frustrated. Is his pride and reputation more important than our well-being? Even if we can barely pay the rent, we're struggling and can't save any money. That's why I suggested moving. But once Sal's mind is made up, there's no changing it. So I had no choice but to give up. Our tough days continued, and then Sal said something unbelievable to me. Hey, is this all we're having for dinner today? We used to have more dishes back in the day. Are you slacking off now that you're working? You should balance things better. I was so frustrated by my husband's words that I snapped back. Times are tough, you know. I'm doing my best with both housework and my job. We have to cut back on food expenses because someone insists on living in this place due to their pride. Or maybe you could earn more. That'd be nice. When I made that provocative remark, my husband lost it. What the hell? Don't throw that in my face. Just watch. I'll get a job at a better company and earn more than you. That's my husband getting angry like that. He can be so tedious, but if this lights a fire under him, maybe it's for the best. However, the reality was that he couldn't find a full-time job and had to settle for part-time gigs. He wasn't studying or getting any certifications. He was just working part-time. Every time he went for an interview, he felt disrespected, especially by younger interviewers. Eventually, he gave up job hunting altogether. It was disappointing, especially after he had so passionately declared he'd earn more than me. But my problems weren't just with my husband. It was my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law is the person who does not hesitate to call me even though I am at work. She had already called over 10 times just this morning. When I called her back during my lunch break, she started yelling right away. Pick up the phone immediately when I call. Mother-in-law, I've told you I'm at work, right? I don't care about your little job. My calls come first. Ever since my father-in-law passed away a year ago, she's been calling me incessantly. Most of her calls were about checking if I was supporting her son properly. And now that she's heard I've started working, she's been calling even more frequently during my work hours. So, have you talked to Sal about it? I haven't heard back from him. I'm sorry, but moving in together is difficult right now. I don't care about your opinion. There's no way Sal would oppose it. Well, he's also finding it a bit challenging. Plus, we're financially tight right now. That's impossible. Sal works at a big company. He must be earning well. I always find myself at a loss for words when she says this. My husband asked me not to tell her about his layoff, so I can't tell her the truth. She probably thinks I'm lying about our financial struggles. Her calls are relentless, not just during work hours, but also when I'm at home. Look, a wife should prioritize supporting her husband, and valuing your husband means valuing his mother. You haven't visited us in a while. You should come over. But I'm exhausted from my full-time job, and my husband's part-time job even takes up some of his weekends, so we hardly have any days off together. So, our days don't match. Sorry, both my husband and I are so busy that it's hard to coordinate our schedules. I don't care about your convenience. Besides, Sal is off on the weekends, right? One of you can come over. Mother-in-law seemed quite frustrated and kept pushing. I was about to reach my limit and decided to tell her the truth about my husband. Well, my husband is working on weekends, too. What? What do you mean? Actually, just as I was about to spill the beans, my husband, who had been lounging on the sofa watching TV, rushed over and grabbed my phone. Mom! Sorry I haven't been able to visit lately. I'm working on a big project right now and even working on weekends. I promise I'll come to see you once things settle down. With that, he hung up and handed my phone back. Why did you do that without asking me? Why were you about to tell my mom everything? We should just be honest? She'll keep misunderstanding and nagging me forever. I don't want her to know. Just drop your silly pride for once. Shut up. You've been living off me and now you're talking back? He stormed off to his room. Life was already stressful, and on top of that, I had to deal with mother-in-law's snide remarks and my husband's selfishness. He always said his part-time day job was tough and never did any housework. He wasn't working full-time, just working on the weekends and maybe once or twice during the week. I wish he'd either find another job or at least help with the chores. Or I want you to remember housework and take the initiative. He's not pulling his weight, and I'm the one earning more, yet he complains about everything. I decided to leave home for a while. I went back to my parents' house for about a week to make him realize the difficulty of household chores. I had told my parents everything about our situation. They kept saying, "You should get a divorce." But I didn't want to give up so easily. We had been married for 5 years, and it was a love marriage. If we were to divorce, I wanted to try everything possible to make it work. Sure enough, my husband called when I got to my parents. "Hey, when are you coming back? What about my dinner?" "I won't be back for a while. You'll have to do the chores yourself." "What? Stop joking and come back and do the chores." "No, I won't. I want you to understand how hard it is. Do all the cleaning, laundry, and cooking. You'll realize how tough it was for me to do all that while working." I hung up. He called several times, but I ignored them all. Life at my parents' was so comfortable. Chores were divided among the three of us, and my mom cooked delicious meals, saying, "You must be tired." It felt so good to have meals served without doing anything. I stayed at my parents' for about a week. I wanted to stay longer, but my workplace was far from my parents, and I thought my husband might have realized the difficulty of household chores by now. I returned home after a long time. I was worried the house might be a mess, but it was cleaner than I expected. However, something felt off. Could it be? I checked my husband's room and noticed his clothes and suitcase were missing. He must have gone to mother-in-law's. I called him. "What do you want now?" "Where are you?" "At my parents' house." You didn't go there right after I left, did you? That's right. What are you thinking? That defeats the purpose. It's your fault for leaving in the first place. I'm angry. I'm not coming back. What do you mean? I'm going to live with my mom. You're moving back home? No, we rented a new apartment and moved in. What? I was confused. As I was searching for words, the voice on the phone changed. Hey, Nellie, do you realize what you've done? How dare you abandon your duties and burden Sal? You're the worst wife ever. I'll teach you a lesson. Look, mother-in-law, I had my reasons for leaving. I don't care. We've moved to a new, beautiful apartment. You want to join, right? If you agree to live with us, I'll tell you where it is. She probably didn't know anything. I thought this might work to my advantage. No, thanks. What? She was taken aback by my quick refusal. So, I won't be coming. You mean you'll live alone? You've been relying on Sal. You can't survive on your own. Don't worry. I earn enough to live by myself. If we're not living together, there's no need for us to be married. So, I'll divorce him. What? Both mother-in-law and my husband sounded shocked. Wait, Nellie, we don't need a divorce. I can't continue this marriage. I want to get away from a useless husband like you. When I belittled him, mother-in-law was furious. How dare you speak to Sal like that? We don't need a wife like you. Sal, divorce her now. Well, I'll prepare the divorce papers. You'll regret this. It's too late to apologize now. I'd say the same to you. She hung up. I'm sure mother-in-law and my husband will come here with the divorce papers. Things are moving in my favor. I've given up on him since he went back to mother-in-law without any remorse. He won't change. There's no need to be together. I started packing my things, expecting them to arrive soon. A few hours later, mother-in-law showed up alone. Where's Sal? He doesn't need to see you. Here, he's already filled out his part. Fill out yours quickly. Mother-in-law thrust the divorce papers at me. I couldn't help but notice that my husband's handwriting seemed shaky. He's such a kind soul. How could he hesitate to divorce a terrible wife like you? I'll never forgive you for causing him trouble. Enjoy your miserable life and regret this. She yelled at me as I filled out my part. My husband never had the guts to tell mother-in-law the truth because of his pride. What a pathetic man. What happened to your family home? We sold it, so you can't just move in. I wouldn't want to anyway. How much did you sell it for? It was pretty old. That's none of your business. But I'll tell you anyway. We sold it for about $50,000. Not a huge amount, but it helps. Sal will cover the rent for our new apartment. Really? I'm surprised he passed the credit check. What are you talking about? Sal earns a good salary, of course he passed. Did you put that $50,000 into Sal's account? Why? Oh, you figured it out. But who cares? Stop prying. It's clear you're still hung up on him. But it's too late. It's fine. I'll file the divorce papers. She stormed off, huffing and puffing. I was thrilled to finally be free from them. I packed the rest of my things, moved them to my parents' house, and then found an apartment for myself. I cleverly provoked mother-in-law so I didn't have to split any assets. You think I'd give you any of Sal's precious assets? Remembering my husband's pale face during the asset division discussion still makes me laugh. 2 years later, I got a call from an unknown number one morning. I wonder who it is in the morning hours before going to work. Thinking it might be work-related, I answered. It was mother-in-law. Ah, Nellie, please help. Mother-in-law, I don't think you should be calling me. We're strangers now. Don't say that. I'm in trouble. Let me guess. You can't pay the apartment rent and you've run out of savings. How did you... You never knew about his restructuring, did you? You knew? Yes. I tried to tell you many times, but Sal always stopped me. I'm so sorry, Nellie. Can you come back? No. He never tried to change, no matter how much I told him. And you always bullied me. I don't want to be with people like that ever again. Please, I'm at my wit's end. We don't even have food. According to mother-in-law, my husband kept up appearances, never revealing his restructuring. He paid the rent from the $50,000 mother-in-law got from selling the house. He also splurged occasionally, fearing mother-in-law would get suspicious if he didn't. Living like that, the $50,000 disappeared in no time, and it seems they're now broke. You brought this on yourselves. Why not let go of your pride, move to a cheaper apartment, and live modestly? I didn't expect this. I thought my talented son would support me, and I'd have a comfortable retirement. Mother-in-law sobbed. I quietly hung up and blocked her number. Just to be safe, I also filed a restraining order and made sure I could report any issues immediately. Honestly, both mother and son only think about relying on others. I'll use them as a cautionary tale and strive to be independent. With that thought, I refocused on the task at hand.
As a doctor's wife, you ought to dress properly. That's what my sister-in-law said to me, looking down on me. I guess to her I'm a lesser being. My name is Emily, and I work as a nurse in a general hospital. I met my husband, Ethan, at this very hospital 5 years ago. He was a medical intern back then, and as we cared for each other amidst our busy schedules, we grew close and eventually started dating. Although we often couldn't find time to see each other due to work, after 5 years of dating, he proposed to me this year. Ethan comes from a family of doctors. I wonder if they'll accept me. Today, we're visiting his parents to formally announce our engagement, and I can't help but feel anxious and a bit weak. Hey, have confidence in yourself. After all, I chose you. If anything happens, I'll be there for you. Ethan reassured me, and I felt a bit relieved. Ethan's father runs his own practice, and his brother is the successor. His mother and sister-in-law are homemakers. Even Ethan's aunt and uncles are doctors, making it a typical family of medical professionals. On the other hand, I lost my father at a young age and was brought up in a single-mother household. Wanting to become independent as soon as possible to help my mother, I decided to become a nurse. I studied at a public university thanks to a scholarship. I'm grateful to my mother, who raised me, but I'm worried about the inevitable comparisons that'll be made. Having heard about how strict his parents were, I was incredibly nervous by the time we arrived at Ethan's house. To add to that, not only his parents, but also his brother and his wife and other relatives were there, as Ethan had announced he was bringing his fiancée. After introducing myself to each one, I bowed deeply. "So, Emily, what do you do for a living?" asked my mother-in-law, noticing my anxiety. "I work as a nurse. I met Ethan when he was a medical intern." As I spoke, Amy, the wife of Ethan's brother, interjected. "A nurse? Are you aiming for a more privileged marriage?" she asked, with a hint of mockery, which caused me to shake my head frantically in denial. "No way, that's not it at all." As I tried to explain myself, Ethan's uncle muttered, "There are nurses who aim for medical interns." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "What about your family? What does your father do?" Amy asked, and my voice faltered. My father passed away when I was young. Seeing Amy's knowing look, I felt lost for words. So you were raised by a single mother? I've heard of women who marry doctors for money, she said with an exasperated sigh. Ethan, sensing my distress, raised his voice in frustration. Amy, isn't it rude to say such things at our first meeting? Emily is a hard-working person. She didn't want to burden her mother, so she put herself through public university. I've never seen a nurse as dedicated as her. His words made me blush. Amy apologized with a smile, but her eyes didn't hold any warmth. I'm not ashamed of being raised in a single-parent household, and I certainly didn't marry Ethan for his money. But feeling unable to stand up for myself, I was on the verge of tears. Then Ethan's quiet father spoke. It's impressive that you made it to a public university. Our sons weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. Well, we basically bought their way in with money. He said it with a straight face, but it was clear that this was his father-in-law's idea of a joke. Ethan and his brother-in-law had always been top performers since their school days. You know, neither my brother nor I have fully grown up yet. With this exchange between the father-in-law and Ethan, the tense atmosphere loosened. Speaking of not growing up, Amy, Ethan's sister-in-law, seemed to be stuck in her parents' shadow. The brother-in-law shot a quick glance at Amy and made a sharp comment. Amy apparently graduated from a prestigious all-girls school. It's a school where, even without much academic achievement, one could enroll if they had enough money. She came from a wealthy family, and her marriage to the brother-in-law was arranged, it seems. His comment must have rubbed her the wrong way. Amy glared at the brother-in-law. Don't be rude. By lineage, I outrank you. Don't compare me with a child from a single-mother household. She then turned her harsh stare towards me. I had heard from Ethan that the brother-in-law and Amy didn't have the best relationship. Amy's high and mighty attitude apparently irked the brother-in-law. What's more, for some reason, Amy had suspicions about her husband's fidelity and would throw fits. She suspected that one of the administrative staff at the clinic might be his mistress and kept blaming the brother-in-law. The clinic where the father-in-law is the director isn't that big. There are only about 3 administrative staff. Though all 3 of them are young and attractive, Ethan insists that his brother wouldn't be foolish enough to get involved with an employee. Apparently, she misinterpreted some business emails between him and the staff. I never expected to witness a marital spat upon first meeting them. While I was feeling flustered, my mother-in-law stepped in to help. Stop it. Arguing like this is unsightly. Chastened by their mother-in-law, the brother-in-law and Amy quieted down. Turning to me, the mother-in-law spoke softly. There will be times when you face harsh words from those around you. Emily, are you prepared to marry into a family of doctors? Faced with her question, I nodded firmly. There had been plenty of times when I was envied by senior nurses after starting to date Ethan. Ethan also experienced teasing from his colleagues about dating a nurse. Despite it all, we didn't lose heart, and our bond deepened. All I can think about is marrying Emily. I hope you can all watch over us. No one objected, and they congratulated our upcoming marriage. Considering how strict his parents are, I expected them to object. But contrary to my expectations, both the father-in-law and the mother-in-law kindly accepted us. The only one who seemed unsatisfied was Amy, which concerned me. With the successful completion of our marriage introduction, we got registered. Our relationship didn't change just because we got married. The one thing that changed was the frequent invitations from Amy. Let's go shopping tomorrow. I'll teach you how to dress appropriately as a doctor's wife. Amy often used the phrase, doctor's wife. I was initially surprised at her invitation to go shopping, especially after her condescending attitude at our first meeting. But observing her, it seemed like she wanted to assert her dominance over me. She would buy and flaunt clothes that were beyond my pay grade. Even today, as we went to the boutique, Amy was buying loads of branded clothes. Seeing the amount, I couldn't help but marvel at how much her husband was earning. I've told you before, why don't you quit nursing? Supporting a busy doctor husband is the wife's duty, isn't it? While having tea after shopping, Amy chimed in. Here we go again, I thought. She keeps telling me every time we meet that I should become a homemaker. I consider nutrition. I've never used prepackaged meals. My floors don't have a speck of dust. Are you doing your part as a doctor's wife? Sure, sometimes we rely on ready-made curry pouches and the dust accumulates. It's made me doubt myself, and I've talked about it with Ethan. I asked if I should quit nursing and become a homemaker. Ethan, with a serious face, reassured me. I want you to continue nursing. I fell in love with you for your vibrant work attitude. He had told me before that he was smitten at first sight, seeing me treat patients with kindness. Remembering Ethan's words, I replied, I have no intention of quitting nursing. Ethan understands that too. At that, Amy snickered. Really? I'm sure a low-bred woman like you will be cheated on soon enough. You're only good for your brains after all. Amy suddenly started to look down on me. I won't stand her belittling my household. I lost my temper and gave her a piece of my mind. So your only claim to fame is that you come from a rich family, right? You don't even get along with your husband. Maybe you should worry less about being cheated on and try trusting him more. As soon as I'd said it, I knew it was too late. Amy's face turned beet red with anger, and she looked like a fiery demon. How dare you? A woman like you doesn't belong in this house. With that, Amy stormed off. When I told Ethan what happened, he burst out laughing. You told off my annoying sister, good. She'll cool down after a while. I had regretted what I'd done, but now I felt better. In fact, I was even a little relieved that the invitations to go shopping and tea had ceased. You know, Amy always acts so high and mighty in every boutique. Is she a regular customer or something? Ethan shrugged it off, saying she just loved shopping, but it was on my mind. Hello, I've got something I want to ask. I dialed up a friend. I thought the next time I would see Amy would be months away, at New Year's, but mother-in-law contacted me the next day about a dinner party. Father-in-law was turning 60, and she invited us to celebrate with a high-end sushi meal. The thought of seeing Amy was unpleasant, but I wanted to celebrate father-in-law's birthday. I figured she must have forgotten by now, and I was looking forward to dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant, I saw brother-in-law and his wife approaching. As soon as Amy spotted me, she marched right over, her face stern. Why are you here? Didn't I say you don't belong in this house? Brother-in-law and Ethan hastily tried to calm the aggressively confronting Amy. You better remember what you said. How dare a poor, low-bred woman like you talk back? Amy's anger continued to escalate. People like you, raised in a single-mother household, are considered lower class. I absolutely refuse to dine with someone of your status. Get out. Brother-in-law looked exasperated as Amy caused a scene right in front of the restaurant. Then a cold voice echoed through the commotion. Then go home, you, came a frosty voice. It was mother-in-law. She must not have expected mother-in-law was watching. Huh? Amy murmured softly, glancing over her shoulder. I'm terribly embarrassed by this spectacle outside the store. Mother-in-law's words were met with nods from everyone present. I only argued back because Emily was being rude. I support my husband so much. Amy seemed to go into hysterics, her voice rising again. It's Ethan's fault for bringing such a low-status woman into the family in the first place. Divorce her, even now. Her words were utter nonsense. Naturally, Ethan wore a bewildered expression. Please, don't get more hysterical than this. It's your fault. You insult my education. The fight between brother-in-law and Amy had officially started. Mother-in-law intervened once more. I had planned to ask about this later, but if you're going to make such a fuss, I'll ask now. Amy, you're hiding something, aren't you? At mother-in-law's words, the arguing voices instantly went silent. Hiding something? What do you mean? Amy's voice trembled slightly, though she was trying to stay calm. Emily told me about your shopaholic tendencies. Amy's face turned ashen. You always talk about a certain department store. One of my friends works there. She had been puzzled about Amy's ability to buy so many brand name clothes. At first, she thought brother-in-law was very open-minded. But would he really let his wife, with whom he didn't get along, freely make such high-priced purchases? Something seemed off. She thought that maybe Amy was receiving an allowance from her wealthy parents. But Amy had proudly claimed that since marrying brother-in-law, she had never asked her parents for money. According to Ethan, brother-in-law was indifferent to money and let Amy handle his salary and savings. Perhaps that's why Amy had free rein to spend. According to mother-in-law's friend, Amy was a frequent shopper at the store and would sometimes spend hundreds of thousands in a day. But her attitude was so arrogant that the staff found her annoying. Also, Amy, aren't you cashing in on a family credit card? This was just a guess, there was no proof. But it seemed to hit the mark as Amy turned even paler. How did you... She had figured Amy, with her lavish spending habits, was also borrowing money. You don't even understand the value of money, yet you flaunt your power around town. Don't you feel ashamed as a doctor's wife? Amy was rendered speechless by mother-in-law pointing out her shopaholic tendencies. The staff has also complained about your haughty attitude. Even father-in-law, who had been silently listening, couldn't bear it any longer. Amy would wait until father-in-law wasn't around, then visit the clinic to complain about poor cleanliness and scold the staff. The way she treated the 3 office clerks she suspected of having an affair with her husband was appalling. She even demanded that they quit if they had the audacity to flirt with him. Upon learning the real situation, her father-in-law feared that the staff would quit if things continued this way. When my brother-in-law discovered that she had been squandering money, he was livid. How much did you borrow? Tell me everything. Amy just stood silent, not even bothering to apologize. Seeing this, her husband's patience snapped. You high and mighty woman, I want a divorce. Pay back all the money you've spent. Amy, who didn't expect a divorce, desperately pleaded that she didn't want to split up. But nobody, not her in-laws, nor her husband, nor Ethan, was willing to listen to her. Then she turned to me with a plea in her voice. Emily, as a fellow wife, you understand how I feel, right? I couldn't help but laugh at her audacity. Are you asking for help from a woman you've always looked down on because of her social status? Why don't you ask your wealthy parents for help? After I bluntly told her off, Amy's head dropped in defeat, and so Amy and her husband decided to get a divorce. Even when she handed in her divorce application, Amy was still causing a fuss. Eventually, her parents came to take her back home. The money she'd spent over time amounted to millions, and Amy, unable to pay it back, went crying to her parents. They paid off her debts, but she's now the talk of the town as the woman who spent her husband's money. It's going to be hard for her to remarry. Her parents are so embarrassed that they're keeping her indoors for now. They've confiscated her cash and credit cards, too. Amy, who used to relieve stress through shopping, is now locked up in her room, I heard. I never really understood why she tried to assert dominance over me, despite coming from a wealthy family. Her brother-in-law once told me that Amy had an inferiority complex about her education. She was irritated when I, a clever woman with a degree from a public university, was praised by relatives for marrying Ethan. Seeing Amy, I understood that being rich doesn't necessarily mean being happy. Then I had a question for my mother-in-law. Why did you allow me to marry into your family? I thought marrying into a doctor's family required a good family background. Upon my hesitant question, my mother-in-law answered with a smile. Actually, I also married your father-in-law, a medical intern back then, when I was a nurse, before our children were born. She said she had faced a lot of opposition to her marriage from her family because she was a nurse. She didn't want her sons to experience the same hardships, so she arranged a marriage for her eldest son with a girl from a good family. However, her eldest son, who married Amy, didn't seem happy at all. He looked more like he was tired of married life. That's why she wanted her second son to be with the person he loved and was willing to approve it from the beginning. It was a surprise when my second son brought home a nurse. It seems blood doesn't lie, huh? My mother-in-law and I shared a chuckle. From then on, I worked as a nurse in my father-in-law's clinic. I guess he hired me because he liked the strength I showed by not letting Amy's nasty comments get to me. My salary is higher than before, and working close to my beloved family makes me feel really blessed.
Here you go. What my husband handed me was unmistakably divorce papers. It was so sudden that my mind couldn't catch up. The voice I managed to squeeze out was trembling noticeably. Well, why? We've never even mentioned divorce before. Isn't it obvious? Because you're infertile. In the end, we divorced. I was forced to take all the blame and end the relationship unwillingly. However, the tragedy of my husband was to come several years later. My name is Michelle. I'm 27 years old. I married Jake, who's the same age as me, and we're in our 3rd year of marriage. Jake and I were classmates in college, and we've been dating since then. After graduating from college, we went through the unfamiliarity of working life and eventually got married. We've always been more like best friends than a couple. It may not be as romantic as the typical couple, but this relationship where we could talk about anything with complete honesty was comfortable for me. We've had arguments at times, but our marital relationship has been good. I thought we were going to live happily forever. Until one day, in our 2nd year of marriage, Jake came home looking grumpy. Hey, Michelle, aren't you pregnant yet? Huh? Why this sudden question? My mom asked why we don't have kids yet after being married for 2 years. That again? We talked about this, that children are a gift, remember? That might be true, but it's been 2 years already, right? It's honestly stressing me out to be constantly nagged by my mom. What am I supposed to do about that? Ever since we got married, my mother-in-law has been saying that she wants to see her grandchild soon. It's nice that she's looking forward to a grandchild. And if I could, I'd love to do that for her as soon as possible. But no matter how much time passed, we just weren't being blessed with a child. From my perspective, we've only been married for 2 years, but from my mother-in-law and Jake's point of view, it's already been 2 years. Recently, every time I see my mother-in-law, I'm reminded about children, and sometimes Jake even brings it up. Pregnancy is an issue between the couple. Yet my husband and my mother-in-law would blame me as if it was my fault. Because of this, our intimate moments have decreased, and we've been arguing more than before. This can't go on. I decided to express my feelings clearly. Jake, I don't think we need to rush this. What? Why are you so casual about it? With a disgusted look, my husband responded to my words. Do I have to keep hearing the nagging from my mom forever? That's why we should tell your mom that we should leave it to nature. If she could understand that, we wouldn't be having a hard time. Just try a little harder, please. What? What does that mean? It sounded as if I wasn't trying hard enough. What does try harder mean anyway? Is it such a bad thing that we haven't been blessed after 2 years of marriage? I couldn't understand my husband's perspective, and I was about to yell at him, but I didn't want to escalate the situation. I swallowed my anger, but my husband added fuel to the fire. You know, I've been thinking for a while now. Michelle, are you infertile? What? What are you talking about? Isn't it obvious? Isn't it strange that we haven't had any children? How does that make me the problem? It could be both of us, or it could be you, Jake. What? Why me? It's usually the woman's problem when a couple can't have kids, right? What? Are you serious? His unbelievable statement left me more stunned than angry. Please stop with the stereotypes. We're only 27, you know. We're not in a hurry. but my mom says she wants to see her grandchild soon, so we can't help it. Why do we have to cater to your mom's wishes? Look, just go get a fertility test or something, okay? My husband dropped the topic one-sidedly and locked himself in his room. Left alone, tears welled up in my eyes from all the anger and sadness. What on earth? How can he say such things so casually, as if it's all my fault when this is an issue between us? He could easily tell his mother straight out. From that day, our relationship as a couple deteriorated rapidly. I did as he told and had a fertility test, but it turns out I don't have any issues. Even when I shared this, his attitude didn't change at all. If anything, he's become even colder since it was confirmed that there's no problem on my end. Even when we're called to his parents' house together, I'm the only one who gets blamed. "Michelle, I heard the story from Jake." His mother yells at me, mercilessly. "You apparently told Jake that you shouldn't rush into having kids yet. I've said it before, having children is a blessing." "Enough! How long are you going to have this laid-back attitude? You're almost 30, aren't you?" "Yes, I am, but there are plenty of people who have children past 30 these days." "Don't make excuses. You've been married for more than 2 years and you still don't have children." My husband didn't defend me, even when she hurled such insults at me. Moreover, his icy gaze seemed to say, "It's your fault." I couldn't get through to them, and I was just constantly criticized. With all the blame being thrown at me, I felt like my heart was about to crush. And then his mother delivered the final blow. "Oh, I shouldn't have approved of this marriage with an infertile woman." "I'm not infertile," I wanted to retort, but the words got stuck in my throat. All that came out were tears. Even seeing me like this, my husband didn't offer any kind words, just let out a small sigh. Several days later, since then, I barely talked to him. Of course, no intimacy either. What used to be a happy life turned upside down and became like hell. On this day, as usual, I was preparing dinner in a gloomy mood, waiting for him to come home. As soon as he got home, my husband stormed towards me. "Here you go." What he handed me was unmistakably divorce papers. Why? We've never even mentioned divorce before." "Isn't it obvious? Because you're infertile." "What?" I couldn't comprehend what was happening. It was all too sudden. The voice I managed to squeeze out was trembling noticeably. "Hold on, I told you, right? The tests showed that I'm not infertile." "Then why can't we have kids? It doesn't make sense." "If you think so, why don't you get tested, Jake?" "What? Why me? Isn't infertility a woman's issue?" "That's not necessarily true. The doctor even said that the cause could be on the male side." At that, my husband shouted, "Shut up!" louder than I'd ever heard him before. Seeing his terrifying face for the first time, my shoulders trembled unintentionally. I was at a loss for words, and he calmly told me, "There's no way the problem is with me. It's all your fault." "But the hospital confirmed there's no issue with me." "Shut up, you defective product. My mom was right to oppose our marriage. I'm embarrassed. I'm fed up with being married to a barren woman like you." "How could you?" "Shut up and sign the divorce papers. I don't love you anymore." His cruel words made my head spin. Everything went dark before my eyes, and I no longer had the energy to retort. I filled out the divorce papers as told and signed it. When I finished, my husband coldly told me, "Pack up and get out by tomorrow." "What? So soon?" "Don't talk back. Make sure you submit the divorce papers, got it?" "I understand." The next day, I did as I was told and packed up my things. After leaving the apartment I had shared with my husband, I submitted the divorce papers on my way back to my parents' house. Just like that, our marriage came to an abrupt end. For a while after that, I was weighed down by the divorce. It was only possible to recover because of the support from my family. From then on, I spent my days off going out with local friends or making time for my hobbies. Doing so gradually faded the unpleasant memories of Jake, and I was steadily stepping into a new life. 2 years later, I remarried a man I met at the gym I started going to for my hobby. We were able to have a child right away. I wasn't infertile after all. There was no reason for me to be blamed. Just knowing that I could become pregnant lightened my heart. I'm glad I divorced Jake. I thought that from the bottom of my heart. Then one day, I got an invitation to a college reunion from a friend. Jake, my ex-husband, was in the same year, so I thought it would be awkward to meet him and was going to decline, but apparently he had already informed them that he wouldn't attend. I was also entering my second trimester, and I wanted to announce my marriage to my close friends, so I decided to attend the reunion. The day of the reunion finally came. I dressed up for the occasion and headed to the venue. Seeing my slightly swollen belly, my friends rushed over and showered me with congratulatory words. "Michelle, congratulations! We were worried when we heard you got divorced, but you look so happy. I'm really glad you met someone nice. Congratulations!" Tearing up, I thanked my friends. There I was, enclosed in this room of happiness. But that was short-lived. "Wait, Michelle?" A familiar voice disrupted the peaceful atmosphere. Jake was standing there. He approached me with a smug grin on his face. "Long time no see. How have you been?" "Jake, I was told you weren't coming to the reunion today." "I just happened to attend a company party nearby, so I just popped in." "Oh, I see. Well, I'll be going now." As I tried to walk away, he stopped me. "Hold on a minute." The next moment, he said something that made my ears burn. "Hey, Michelle, you've put on some weight, haven't you?" "Excuse me?" "Whoa, you've gotten fat. I guess you won't be remarrying anyone." He looked me up and down, laughing at me in a demeaning way. In that moment, the tiny bit of feelings I had left towards him instantly turned into hate. Seeing me tremble in anger, my ex-husband mistakenly thought he'd won. Taking advantage of my silence, he started hurling insults at me. "Your belly is too big. You're a terrible woman." He's the terrible human being. I firmly told Jake, "This is a baby bump. I'm pregnant." At that remark, my ex-husband looked dumbfounded. He was likely unable to understand the situation, so I explained carefully. "Did you hear me? This isn't fat. There's a baby inside." What? What are you saying? There's no way." "Why not?" "Huh? Why are you so certain it's impossible?" Despite my harsh tone, Jake stammered, "Well, that's—" As if to settle old scores, I tauntingly retorted, "Are you trying to say that I am infertile?" "Well, that's what I thought. Isn't that why you couldn't get pregnant for so long?" "But here I am, remarried and expecting a child. Do you still think I'm infertile?" "Oh." From behind him a voice said, "Excuse me." There was an unfamiliar woman standing there. Upon seeing her, my ex-husband Jake visibly flinched. "Rachel, didn't I tell you to wait at the entrance?" "I just followed you because I was concerned. What's going on here?" "Oh." "Jake, didn't you say that you divorced because your ex-wife was infertile? That you loved each other but thought about each other's situation and decided on a peaceful divorce?" That's... From what I heard of your conversation, it doesn't seem like you had a peaceful separation at all." The two of them were descending into a scene of a television drama in front of me. It appeared that this woman named Rachel was Jake's current girlfriend. Upon noticing how I was, Rachel opened her mouth with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry for the sudden interruption. I'm Rachel. You're Michelle, right? The ex-wife?" "Yes, that's correct, but I heard from Jake that your infertility was the reason for your divorce, but that's not true, is it?" "And the part about a peaceful divorce?" "Well, that's a downright lie. After all, he arbitrarily decided that I was infertile and abruptly pushed the idea of divorce onto me." I thought so. It seemed that Rachel had been fed a convenient lie by Jake. She seemed to feel a certain degree of anger at the truth that had come from my mouth. Jake desperately began making excuses, trying to regain her trust. Even at this point, he was still just a man trying to save his own skin. "No, Rachel, really, it was a peaceful divorce." "That doesn't make sense, does it? Michelle said she was abruptly pushed into a divorce." "But that's because she—" "But Michelle's pregnant now, isn't she?" That's... "I hope it isn't so, but you're not the cause of the infertility, are you, Jake?" "What?" As she continued her questioning, Jake's face gradually turned pale. He probably never imagined that he might be blamed for the infertility. With that, my ex-husband Jake was totally dispirited. Still pale, he crumbled onto his knees right there. Voices of condemnation could be heard from the classmates who had witnessed the whole incident. Jake really messed up blaming his infertility on his wife. That's just nuts. Making Michelle the villain, that's low. That guy's done as a man. Besides, apparently he's a total mama's boy.
Ew, seriously? So creepy.
Unable to bear the chilly atmosphere, Jake ran off in tears. According to the rumors I heard later, Jake and Rachel ended their engagement right after that. He desperately tried to hold on to her, but it seemed Rachel wouldn't have it. Rachel couldn't forgive him, not just for lying, but for blaming me for the infertility. Although Jake was adamant that he had done nothing wrong, medical tests revealed that he was the one with fertility issues. Although it wasn't impossible for him to have a child, the verdict was nearly impossible under the current circumstances. Upon hearing the diagnosis, his mother disowned Jake in a rage, even though she adored her son. Well, she did want a grandchild so much, so it's understandable. And so their mother-son relationship reached its worst end. Both Jake and my former mother-in-law only thought about themselves, and this was the result. They brought it upon themselves, and they got what they deserved. Well, it's none of my business anymore. I couldn't care less about what fate befalls them. On the other hand, I recently gave birth to my first child without any issues. My baby is even more adorable than I imagined, and every day is filled with joy. My first pregnancy, my first time raising a child. There's a lot I don't know about, but I'm truly happy. I have nothing but gratitude for my husband, who gave me this happiness. Thank you for always being there for me. I expressed my words of gratitude to my husband, or rather, the words just slipped out of my mouth before I knew it. My husband then flashed a bright smile and said, "What are you talking about? It's only natural as a spouse, right?" "Perhaps that's true. Besides, you're the one that did all the work. Thank you for giving birth to such an adorable child," my husband told me while looking directly into my eyes. At his words, tears naturally started to fall. I'm the happiest person in the world. With a husband I love so much, and our adorable child will always be together.
Truth is, my ex-wife died in an accident. I'm thinking of taking in our twin daughters, but that's probably not okay, right? Sorry for such a talk. I blurted out. "It's fine," came the upbeat reply from my wife. I thought for a moment I'd misheard her. "Wait, are you sure? We're talking about adding 2 kids to our family." "It's okay. Bring them home," she said. I couldn't fathom why she agreed to this sudden proposal. And then she explained. "My name is Hayden. I've been married to Lisa for 2 years now. I'm divorced, and this is my second marriage with Lisa. My ex-wife cheated on me, which led to our divorce. My ex, Amy, was flamboyant and sociable, the exact opposite of me, with a large circle of friends. I am a simple guy, but Amy liked the fact that I was a key player in a renowned corporation, so she decided to marry me. Amy's advancements were so persistent that I ultimately gave in and married her. Life with Amy was enjoyable in its own way. I'm grateful to Amy for giving birth to our twin daughters, who are my world." Just as our twin daughters, Molly and Clara, turned 2, Amy abruptly declared, "I want a divorce. I'm pregnant with another man's child." At first, I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. My anger flared up, and I demanded to know who the man was. The father of Amy's child was a frivolous man, whom Amy met often. He was one among Amy's large circle of friends, and even attended our wedding. I couldn't believe that a man who attended our wedding would then go on to have an affair with my wife. I couldn't bear to breathe the same air as Amy anymore, so I took Molly and Clara and moved back with my parents. We filed for divorce, demanding compensation, but I couldn't win custody of my daughters. I'd heard it was difficult for fathers to win custody of young children, but it was hard for me to accept that even though the mother had cheated, I couldn't secure their custody. Regardless, I couldn't overturn it, and was granted visitation rights to see Molly and Clara by paying child support. looking forward to the days when I could see my girls. I had no choice but to continue living. I tried to create as many happy memories as possible whenever I saw Molly and Clara, to ensure their memories with their dad were joyous ones. We would go to theme parks, visit zoos. I did everything I could for my adorable daughters. But I could no longer live with them. Once I dropped them back with Amy, I would get on the train home alone. One such day, I suddenly realized I was crying. My wife had been stolen, my daughters taken away, and I felt empty. I was so emotionally drained that I didn't know what I was living for. A grown man crying on a train must have been an odd sight. As people distanced themselves from me, Lisa approached me.
Are you okay? If you're not feeling well, we can get off at the next station together, she offered.
I found Lisa to be quite unusual with her genuine concern. I wondered what she stood to gain by being kind to a man like me. I'm okay, I curtly replied.
People who are okay don't cry,
Lisa responded, handing me a handkerchief, and indeed, she got off at the next station with me. I stopped as Lisa suggested calling over a station attendant, and sitting on a bench on the platform, I confided to her about my miserable situation. As I spoke, she nodded attentively, making me realize what an unusual person she was.
You'll be fine, Hayden. This might be a dark period in your life right now, but brighter days will come.
I was genuinely comforted by Lisa's words. Using the excuse that I wanted to wash and return her handkerchief, I got Lisa's contact information, and we began to meet frequently after that. Lisa, who is kind to everyone and treats every person with the utmost kindness, was even more of an oddball the more I got to know her. I even started suspecting if she had any ulterior motives. However, Lisa was not the type to be cunning or double-faced. She often made endearing blunders, and I found myself falling for her. Each time she would call out,
"Hayden, what should I do?"
in panic seeking my help. We ended up getting married as a result of my approach towards her. You light up my life, Lisa. Will you marry me? The moment Lisa laughed joyfully at my embarrassingly sincere proposal, I knew I would never forget it for the rest of my life. I was still able to meet Molly and Clara on a regular basis as always. Even after the birth of our son Tom, I continued to see them. Lisa was aware that I was paying child support and knew I had twin daughters. But I couldn't bring myself to tell her about my meetings with Molly and Clara, fearing it would upset her. Feeling guilty, I lied to Lisa, saying I was going to hang out with friends whenever I went to see Molly and Clara. Lisa would see me off with a smile and say,
"Be careful."
One day, while thinking that I should eventually tell her that I was regularly meeting with Molly and Clara, I received a sudden, shocking message.
"Amy died."
The message was from Amy's mother. Amy's mother, with a crestfallen look on her face, informed me that Amy had died in an accident. Amy, her current husband with whom she was having an affair, and their child who was born to them, were all killed in a tragic car accident during a road trip. Amy's mother told me that she couldn't take care of Molly and Clara, as her own health was failing, and their grandfather had passed away earlier. The moment she said she would have to put Molly and Clara in a facility if no one could take them in, I found myself instinctively saying, "I'll take them in." Amy's mother thanked me, but I was immediately consumed by a sense of guilt for having given an impulsive response. After all, I had my own family now with Lisa and Tom. Feeling it was unforgivable, I decided to discuss this with Lisa. Actually, my ex-wife died in an accident. I want to take in the twins, but that's not okay, is it? I'm sorry for bringing up such a topic.
"What? That's awful. No, it's fine."
I was startled by Lisa's response. I was prepared for divorce, or at least a look of disgust. I thought I had heard wrong. You're okay with it? This means we'll have 2 more kids.
"That's fine. Bring them home. They must be scared with their mother suddenly gone."
With that, she urged me, who was still in a daze, to prepare to go out. Putting on my shoes in the foyer, I asked Lisa, "Why are you forgiving me? She laughed at me with a slightly bewildered expression.
You silly. After all, you've always been loving towards the twins, Molly and Clara. I noticed. You've been visiting them regularly.
Why?
Well, you always seem so cheerful when you return from these sneaky outings. I knew you wouldn't cheat on me. Pretty good detective, huh?
Lisa joked, and I immediately understood she was trying to cheer me up. At the same time, I came to realize how big-hearted Lisa was. Thank you, I said, and then I headed to my in-laws' house by car to pick up Molly and Clara. At only 5 years old, Molly and Clara, suddenly left all alone, were asleep in their grandparents' house, huddled together for mutual support. Seeing the traces of tears on their cheeks truly pained me. I thanked my mother-in-law, woke up Molly and Clara, and tried to explain the situation as simply as possible so that even children could understand. They cried at the thought of never seeing Amy again, but they said they wanted to live with me. In the car, I talked to Molly and Clara about Lisa and our baby, telling them how kind and wonderful Lisa was, and that our baby was still very small and adorable. The girls looked anxious. When we got home, Lisa had prepared a feast. She had cooked dishes that she thought the children would like, and she introduced herself to Molly and Clara with a warm smile.
I'm Lisa. I'll be living with you two from now on, so let's get along. I know you must be very sad right now, but don't worry. You have your dad, and of course, I'll be here too.
Lisa spoke to Molly and Clara in a gentle voice, and without seeming bothered by their lack of response, she encouraged them to eat their fill. The girls timidly started eating, but it must have been really good, because they soon started eating enthusiastically, which was a relief to me. After giving Molly and Clara a bath, I found that Lisa had already bought bedding for the kids. Since I had been using the car, Lisa had brought the bedding back on her own.
That was quite a task.
Lisa chuckled, but all I felt was gratitude. Molly and Clara refused to sleep with Lisa, so I ended up sleeping between the two of them. When I apologized to Lisa for the girls' behavior, she comforted me, saying,
It's okay. It's too much to expect them to adjust so quickly. Right now, you're the only one who can support Molly and Clara emotionally, so don't worry about me and just do your best.
Lisa laid out a mattress in the living room and slept there. During the night, Molly and Clara cried in their sleep, and I spent a painful night. After that, life with Molly and Clara went smoother than I expected. Lisa didn't mind when Molly and Clara gave her skeptical looks. She would scold them like a real mother when they were mischievous, and she would comfort them gently when they were crying. One thing I noticed after living together was that Amy had not been very affectionate towards the girls. Molly and Clara tried to do everything on their own. They would open the refrigerator on their own when they were hungry, munch on cheese, and even lay out and put away their own bedding. At first, I thought they were very independent, but their behavior seemed odd. Lisa also consulted with me, and we concluded that Amy may not have taken care of Molly and Clara very much. The clothes that were sent as Molly and Clara's belongings were shockingly few. Whenever Lisa would prepare a meal, they would ask,
Will Lisa share the food with us too?
They seemed puzzled by the concept of bathing daily at first, and it appeared that until then, they had been bathing only once every 2 days. What's more, these 5-year-old kids were taking baths on their own. The story of Amy going on a trip with her husband and the child born between them, only to encounter an accident, seemed strange from the get-go. Why weren't Molly and Clara taken along on the trip? It was clear that the girls had been treated poorly, and I couldn't contain my anger. I can't forgive Amy and her husband. Once they had parental rights, they had a responsibility to make Molly and Clara happy. So why didn't they take care of them? I was trembling with rage, but both Amy and her husband were no longer alive to bear the brunt of it. With nowhere to direct my anger, I clenched my fists tightly, and Lisa spoke.
Hayden, I understand your anger. I'm angry at Amy and the others for not properly raising such adorable children like Molly and Clara. But being consumed with anger at people who are no longer in this world isn't going to do any good. The greatest revenge on Amy and the others is to ensure that Molly and Clara find happiness living with us, don't you think? So let's shower them, and of course our son Tom, with lots of love. Don't be consumed by anger and hatred for the deceased.
Lisa's calm and gentle words made me break down in tears. Despite regularly meeting them, I hated myself most for not noticing the treatment Molly and Clara had been receiving. Trying to blame myself, Lisa consoled me, saying,
It's okay, Hayden. You're doing everything you can.
To fulfill my own responsibility as a father, I dedicated myself to being a good father for Molly and Clara, and of course our son Tom. Initially, Molly and Clara were wary of Lisa, but gradually they warmed up to Lisa, who always spoke to them brightly and casually. Although they initially refused to even sleep together, nowadays, both Molly and Clara want to sleep next to Lisa. The two of them would fight, each saying,
Lisa is mine.
But Lisa would hug them both at the same time and say,
No need to fight, darlings. I love you both. It's okay.
Lisa's words, "It's okay," were like magic. Always positive and bright, Lisa, who would reassure us with those words, was a blessing to me, Molly, and Clara. Time flew, and Molly and Clara became fifth graders. For Parents' Day, the theme was Halfway to Adulthood, which made Lisa and me nostalgic. We also had a halfway to adulthood ceremony when we turned 10, during our elementary school Parents' Day. I remember we made presentations about our feelings towards our parents and our treasures. At Molly and Clara's school, it seems that they're required to write an essay for their halfway to adulthood ceremony. The theme of the essay is family, and I was a little worried that Lisa might feel uncomfortable. If Molly and Clara focused on writing about Amy and her husband in their essay, it might hurt Lisa. I even shared my concerns with Lisa, but she just laughed it off, saying,
Even if the essay was entirely about Amy and her husband, I wouldn't mind at all. For Molly and Clara, their life with them was a part of their happiness, right? Isn't it a good thing after all?
With the twins, the trouble is deciding which parent will attend which day on Parent-Teacher Day. It's a sad story for me, but both Molly and Clara asked for Lisa to come. To make it fair, I had them decide who would get Lisa through rock, paper, scissors. Molly was the victor, and Clara was quite down about it, which made me rather sad. Is it so bad to have Dad come? Dad loves Clara very much.
It's not that. Clara loves Dad too, but I wanted Lisa to hear me out.
I worried that Clara might already be in her rebellious phase, but I understood why Clara wanted Lisa to listen when I heard the content of the essay she read on Parent-Teacher Day. Clara had written about Lisa in her essay. Clara mentioned her life with Amy and her husband in her essay as well. It seems that their life together wasn't a particularly happy one. Yet Clara wrote that she felt helpless when her mother passed away. When I came to pick them up, Clara was happy to live with me, but she was scared of living with Lisa, a stranger at the time. But then, Clara started talking about what Lisa had done for her, the time they took a bath together and played in the bubble bath for the first time. When she cried late at night because she was lonely, Lisa stroked her head until she fell asleep. When Clara fought with Molly, Lisa reassured both of them, saying she loved them both, which made Clara very happy. In her essay, Lisa was nothing less than a mother.
I want to call Lisa Mom, but I'm still too embarrassed, so I haven't been able to call her that. I plan to call Lisa Mom for the first time.
I couldn't help but cry when Clara concluded her essay reading like this. Some of the parents around me also seemed to be tearing up, and even the teacher was wiping away tears. After Parent-Teacher Day, Lisa, who was with Molly, also had red eyes and a red nose. When I asked her what happened, Lisa said Molly had also read a similar essay. Molly and Clara must have planned it. They held hands, nodded to each other,
and then together said to Lisa, We love you, Mom, with bright smiles. Lisa hugged Molly and Clara, bursting into tears, and said with a trembling voice, Mom loves Molly and Clara so much. Being a crybaby, I naturally bawled. Our family is living happily. At some point, the idea of getting revenge on Amy and her husband had disappeared. I just want to protect this lovely family of ours. All of this daily happiness is thanks to Lisa. When I told Lisa thank you, she smiled back and said,
No, thank you.
I can't thank her enough.
Finished moving out yet?
We're just about to leave.
Good, you're quick. We'll move our stuff in right away, too.
My brother-in-law Michael and his family seem to have it all planned. The moment we left our family home, they moved their stuff in, settling in as if they owned the place. Did we do the right thing letting them in? When I vent my concerns to my husband, he simply laughs.
Don't worry, let them have their fun. It's them who will come crying to us later.
Sure enough, a few months later, Michael called us in a panic. I couldn't help but laugh at their grand misconception. My name is Mary. I met Joseph in college, a senior who was a year older than me. The 1-year age gap felt significant at the time, and Joseph, being so reliable, looked truly dependable. As my feelings for Joseph grew, I confessed to him. Fortunately, Joseph felt the same way, and we started dating. Even after graduation and starting our jobs, our love continued to grow. We couldn't live without each other. Joseph proposed during our 5th year of work. I was thrilled, but nervous about meeting his parents. Joseph, your dad runs his own business, right? And your mom comes from a wealthy family. Will they be okay with someone like me? Joseph reassured me with a smile.
You're thoughtful, and most of all, kind. They'll love you.
Boosted by his confidence, I nervously introduced myself to his parents. So you're Mary. We've been looking forward to meeting you. You're as cute and competent as Joseph said.
Has Joseph been any trouble to you?
No, not at all. Joseph has been so kind to me. Just as Joseph predicted, both his dad Daniel and mom Linda welcomed me warmly. You feel like you've been our daughter forever, they said.
If we ever had a daughter, she would have been just like you,
they added. I sincerely shared with my in-laws. I also think of Daniel and Linda as my own parents. After our wedding and honeymoon, Joseph and I were in a rush to find a new place as our current condo lease was expiring. That's when my father-in-law made us an offer.
Actually, I'll be traveling overseas for a few months starting next month. It's a pretty laid-back job, so I was planning on taking my wife along for some sightseeing. Why don't you live in our house while we're away and take your time finding a new place?
Really? That would be amazing. For us, struggling to find a good property, it was an offer we couldn't refuse. If you don't find a place you like, you can continue living here. I didn't miss the words of my mother-in-law, spoken with a hint of reserve. I'd be so happy if we could. Is that really okay? Are you sure you're all right with that, Mary? Living with your mother-in-law and all? I think of you, Linda, as a real mother, not just my mother-in-law. Joseph's family home is quite a mansion with multiple rooms. Although not built for 2 families, it's more than spacious, with guest restrooms and 2 bathrooms. There's only 1 kitchen, but it was easier for me to alternate cooking for 4 people with my mother-in-law than preparing meals just for the 2 of us. We had a good relationship with my in-laws, so there were only benefits to living with them. We gratefully accepted their offer and started our new life in Joseph's family home. After we moved, they hosted a housewarming party and invited all the relatives. You're the guest of honor, just sit and enjoy, my mother-in-law told me, but I found it equally enjoyable to hear stories from relatives I usually don't get to see.
You really found a considerate woman, Joseph. the relatives would say. Each time my mother-in-law and I exchanged smiles. Then I realized something was off. Joseph's older brother wasn't there. Joseph is the second son, and he has an older brother named Michael, 2 years his senior. While most of the relatives showed up, Michael and his wife were noticeably absent. Daniel, where are Michael and his wife today? I asked my father-in-law. He looked a little downcast as he replied, "They're fine. Don't worry about them." When I looked puzzled, my mother-in-law elaborated, "Michael used to always come to these things, but ever since he married Jessica, he's been distant." I had heard from Joseph that his mom always favored the eldest son, and she seemed to greatly dislike Jessica for changing her beloved son. In the end, Michael and his wife never showed up that day. Joseph and I sent a moving-in greeting letter to their home afterward. A few days later, I received a phone call from Michael. "Is Joseph there?" His voice was curt. "Ah, Michael, Joseph is at work today. Can I take a message?" "You're Joseph's wife, right? Mary?" "Yes, it's been a while." "Why are you two living in the family home?" "Huh?" "This is a moving notice. The new address is my parents' house, isn't it?" "Yeah, well, Daniel and the others recommended it, so we've been graciously living here." "When I heard about your housewarming, I thought how audacious you were to use my parents' house. But I never thought you'd actually be living there. You've got some nerve." It was clear Michael didn't like that we were living at his parents' home. "Phone calls aren't cutting it. I'm coming over this weekend to talk." "Daniel will be away scouting for an overseas trip next weekend." "I don't care about Dad. I need to talk with you and Joseph." "Well, Joseph might be busy with work too." "Seriously? Then you'll do." And so Michael came to our home the next weekend. Mother-in-law seemed delighted to see her son after such a long time. "Mom, you're here too?" "Of course. I've been looking forward to seeing you, Michael. I'll be heading to Dad's next week, so I'm glad we could meet." "Oh yeah, I heard Dad got a job overseas." Michael said this with disinterest and glared at me. "Since your eldest son is here, how about making some coffee?" "Oh, sorry." As I hurried to make the coffee, Michael sneered. "Just coffee, no snacks. You really don't get it. Usually you serve sweets too." "Sorry." As I rushed to get some snacks, Michael stopped me. "You're not planning on using store-bought snacks, are you? Get some cake from that place downtown. Remember that for next time." Mother-in-law seemed pleased with her eldest son's visit and didn't offer any help. "Mary, could you go get some? Michael has always loved their cakes." It seems mother-in-law wasn't on my side here either. All right. As I prepared to go shopping, Michael had another demand. "For dinner, make me a hamburger steak. Use demi-glaze sauce. And don't you dare buy store-made sauce." "You're staying for dinner too?" "You got a problem with that? It's your duty as my brother's wife to entertain me." I went shopping and immediately started preparing dinner. Even though he said he wanted to talk, I had no time for conversation as I got wrapped up in Michael's whims. When dinner was finally ready and I thought we could talk, Michael dropped a bombshell. "Why are there 3 plates?" Because Linda will be eating too, right?" "If Mom's here, it's obvious she's eating. The only one who's in the way is you." "In the way?" "Yeah, I want to have a quiet dinner with Mom. There's no seat for you." "You can't be serious." After making me prepare the meal, Michael kicked me out of the house. I ended up eating alone outside, then came back when I thought the coast was clear. "Shouldn't we talk now?" I finally broached the subject with Michael, who nonchalantly replied, "That talk is unnecessary now." "What do you mean?" "Jessica and I have decided to live in this house. You and Joseph will have to leave." "What? We've already moved in." "Don't you think it's better for me, the eldest son, to stay in this house, Mom?" My mother-in-law looked regretful as she spoke to me. "Mary, I apologize, but Michael finally seems to be stepping up as the eldest son. It would give me peace of mind if he stayed here." Upon hearing his mom's words, Michael grinned smugly. See, even Mom agrees with me, ha ha ha. So get your stuff packed and move out. Michael said this and left in a good mood. Caught off guard, I was alone in the bathroom when Joseph finally came home from work. What's wrong, Mary? I relayed what Michael had told me. Michael said that? I can't believe he'd treat you so poorly. Joseph was furious and reported the situation to his father overseas. After talking to his father, Joseph said to me, I'm sorry you had to go through this. Let's move out and live on our own. Encouraged by Joseph, I started packing our belongings. Just when we were about to leave, Michael called. Are you done moving? We're about to leave. Good, you're quick. We'll be bringing our stuff over soon. As soon as we left, Michael and his family moved their belongings into the house, acting as if it were their own. Did we make the right choice? Seeing Michael and Jessica do as they please, I couldn't help but complain to Joseph. Don't worry about it. Let them do what they want. They'll be the ones regretting it later. And just like Joseph said, a few months later, Michael called us in a panic. Hey, Dad and Mom just contacted me. They said they're coming home from the airport. What's going on? Isn't it obvious? Their assignment overseas is over, so they're coming back. I thought they'd be staying there for a while. I didn't hear anything about them coming back. I thought this house was handed down to us. Originally, we planned to live together once they returned. You knew that when you pushed us out to live here, didn't you? Jessica would never agree to live with them. But their belongings are still in the house, right? Where did you think they'd live once they got back? Michael got defensive. I thought they left the stuff they didn't need here. You sold it? You sold their belongings? Yeah, Jessica said we should make money off it if it's not needed. My in-laws had left behind valuable items like jewelry and watches. If they sold those, it would sum up to a lot of money. So, where's the money now? It's gone. We spent it like a bonus. What happens if they find out? I guess it's only a matter of time then, hahaha. Damn, what should I do? Mary, can you come over and help? Help? Why should I? So you're Mom's favorite over Jessica, aren't you? Help me out by making it look like Jessica instigated all this. Protecting the eldest son is the duty of a brother's wife. Don't kid yourself. No way I'd ever lift a finger for a disrespectful couple like you. Please, I apologize for everything up until now. An apology won't change anything. You should atone for your own mistakes. That's the role of the eldest son, isn't it? Haha. Ignoring Michael's pleading voice on the other end of the line, I hung up the phone. Then I talked to Joseph. Joseph chuckled. Yeah, because there's no way Jessica, who never got along with Dad and Mom, would agree to move back in. Dad even said to live wherever we want until they give up and move out. He's covering all the moving and rental costs. I see. So, Joseph, who had been quite angry with Michael's presumptuousness, so easily decided to move out because he knew this. I figured if I told you, Mary, you'd probably tip them off. Sorry for keeping quiet. No worries. I feel much better now. Michael and Jessica were stuck waiting for my parents-in-law because they had nowhere else to go, with no savings and a canceled lease. When my parents-in-law returned home from the airport, they were furious to find their belongings sold off. I never thought you'd be this irresponsible. You're not worth retraining. Get out now. Wait, I didn't think you were coming back. I thought Jessica and I could live here. Isn't Mom on my side? Even mother-in-law couldn't cover for him. Michael never intended to live with us. I was a fool to hope he'd change. My parents-in-law handed Michael and Jessica the bills for the jewelry and watches they had sold and kicked them out. We can't pay this. We have nowhere to live. That's right. I'm not even working. Father-in-law shouted at the naive couple. Unbelievable. You spend money you can't repay in a matter of months. Being jobless is no excuse. Work and pay it back. The stern voice of father-in-law finally got through to them. Jessica began juggling multiple part-time jobs, using all her earnings for repayment. They couldn't cover father-in-law's monthly payment plan, so even Michael's salary had to fill in the gap. The two are now living frugally in a cheaper, smaller apartment than before. Later, mother-in-law and father-in-law came to the condo where Joseph and I live. Mary, I'm truly sorry. I got carried away thinking Michael could live with us. It's okay. It's in the past. No, it's not okay. And I'd like to ask you again. Mary, would you consider living with us? Mother-in-law seemed genuinely remorseful. We've always known that mother-in-law isn't a bad person. Joseph and I looked at each other and nodded. Our minds were made up. Of course, if it's okay with Daniel and Linda, we'd love to move back into that house. We all agreed to live together again as a family of 4. I feel like this incident has strengthened the bond between my in-laws and me even more.